just like in the Matrix, where you've got people being batteries for the machines, supplying them with power, the analogy is that we as people here, every one of us are batteries, but instead of supplying energy to machines, we are supplying trillions of dollars worth of money to banks and governments in a way that we have no control over. In fact, the control is imposed on us. But the basic concept is that the internet enabled free flow of information. Anyone can put anything out there, right? We can exercise more freedom of speech. We do not have to worry about what we read for fear of it having been censored, right? In the same way, Bitcoin, not the currency, the technology and the network, enables the free flow of value between people anywhere in the world. And that does not have to be censored. That does not have to be controlled. Limitations are not being imposed on how you do that. It is peer-to-peer. There is no central authority that will control or censor any transactions that can be conducted between two people on the network. So, and this is why I like to come back to the Matrix analogy, all of the controls that are imposed on us. I mean, I can go to town with this stuff. We are told how much money we can take offshore, right? Those limits are imposed on us. So look at what happened in Argentina and Lebanon earlier this week, and actually, in fact, recently. Those tightening capital controls are restricting economic freedoms of people. Yeah, in South Africa, you know, you guys may not feel the impact of those sort of things, but the minute your government starts talking about prescribed assets where your pension fund money has to go into funding government projects, then you want to, you know, jump up in arms, etc. But it's the same sort of thing. How much money in terms of your pension fund portfolio can be invested in offshore assets? There are limits imposed on those kinds of things, and those things have historical roots. The reason those controls are there is because you are able to, or rather through regulation, the government is able to contain money in a domestic finance system that perpetually transfers wealth from individuals like us, taxpayers, savers, towards banks and government projects. Okay, so it is something that they are able to do stealthily, subtly, without anyone jumping up in arms, because, well, you know, it's not as big a deal. It doesn't impact us as immediately as other things would. For example, if governments, in terms of getting out of their debt, had to default on their debt, that's one option to get out of your debt. It would cause chaos in the bond markets, right? They could implement austerity measures and jack up the tax rates. Whoa, would there be political consequences? You would not re-elect them again come next election round, right? So instead of doing those hardcore kind of tactics, they prefer the subtle stuff, which is the basics of financial repression that enables this gradual redistribution of wealth. I mean, you guys, every single year, I just do some research earlier, sorry. The top 6 banks CEOs last year earned $150 million combined. Go and do your research. If you just look at all the CEOs across the globe, every single year they earn trillions of dollars, right? Excluding their share appreciations. And that money is just going through the system. Governments continue financing expenditures. They issue new bonds so they can go to town with their loans. Why? Because with inflation, they're just going to earn more income next year, right? And the way the banking system is set up, your funds that sit in bank deposits move through that system to fund those government bonds and to line up the bank's pockets at the same time. It's one thing to have the system set up the way it is, but the minute you as an individual want to exercise economic freedom and take your money offshore, you have limits. Anyway, so this is why Bitcoin is so fascinating for me, because it enables this freedom. It's the first time that humanity has had an alternative to the current setup. And this is why those that are in the know are so nervous about it. Because you can exit an economy with Bitcoin without leaving the country. Okay, it's a really fascinating technology. In fact, it is so much more than that. And people don't get it because everything we've had in our whole lives, right, had some kind of hierarchy. pyramid structure, whatever you want to call it, there is always someone in charge somewhere. You know, there's a president that's running the country, there is a CEO that's running a company, there's a hotel manager, a restaurant manager. There's always someone in charge eventually at the top of the pyramid that has power to make decisions. With Bitcoin, that doesn't exist. There is no such thing. It is a flat structure. You don't have the miners or the developers or anyone else exercising an undue amount of power compared to the rest of the network. And that is a bizarre thing for us as people to get used to. And because of the consensus mechanism, you don't need an individual authority, company, whatever, to actually intermediate on behalf of all the participants. It is driven by the consensus that is built into the network, which is pretty fascinating. With authority comes responsibility and a lot of power. So in the banking world, for example, you need to have an ID to open up a bank account, your proof of residence or your KYC. You need to be above a certain age. You are only limited to one currency, your domestic currency. You are limited in terms of how much money you can send offshore. There are all kinds of limitations that are imposed upon you using your money, right? With Bitcoin, kids have Bitcoin wallets today. And please, guys, send us the questions. Yesterday, Hugo had some great questions. Please, I'd like to know, sorry about that, I'd like to know what you guys would like us to talk about. But I will get to the investment aspects. I will get to how you get out of the situation and build a better future for yourself, because you are going to need it. All right, guys, again, thank you very much for tuning in. We will chat soon.